Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. This is Sunday evening, October 13th, but we are doing this recording for tomorrow, Monday, October 14th, 2019. This is our GoldFish Report number 396, and it's our week 143 POTUS report with the most dangerous mind in America, the Fetz. How are you, Jim? Thanks for being here with me.
All because of my legal entanglements, they're coming after me to suppress. Nobody died at Sandy Hook, Louisa. That leads to this unusual situation with a trial for damages beginning tomorrow morning. We'll all have a full report on how it turns out. I am guardedly optimistic. I think my attorney is super. We've spent a lot of time preparing. We'll see how it goes. Meanwhile, the president of the United States has been having some rock'em sock'em rallies, and it's impressive in the extreme, Louisa. I'm blown away.
Well, you know what? I'm not, because he's winning bigly, and and that's what we would expect from our POTUS, isn't it, Jim?
Yes.
He just doesn't stop winning. I mean, this is a man that wins and wins and wins, and he's just blowing it out of the ballpark. We're at the rally, which we'll talk about. Let's just first talk about the China trade deal. I mean, this is huge, folks. It's huge. Okay, let's go to this beautiful picture on our blog and talk about this amazing agreement here. This is President applauds the United States Trade Representative Ambassador Robert Lighthizer and Japanese Ambassador to the United States Shinsuke Sugiyama display their signatures after signing the United States-Japan Trade Agreement and the United States-Japan Digital Trade Agreement Monday, October 7th. Everybody looks quite happy there. It's taken a long time to get to this point, Jim. A lot of the people in the mainstream media were totally skeptical that this would happen at all, and it has happened. And let me also just point out what the highlights of this trade agreement were, okay? I'm going to screen share that as well. Basically, we've got a big win for farmers, okay? Let me just say here that normally it's about an $18 billion export, purchase to China. They've got a lot of people, Jim, a lot of mouths to feed. And, I think there's also a big pork industry in China as well. I don't know why. It's full of parasites, but people want to eat it anyway. It's amazing. Anyway, it's a great deal for the farmers. This is going to start a 2-year deal, and it will increase after that. But it's a $40 to $50 billion deal. As the president said, these farmers are going to have to be buying more land, more farm, and bigger tractors, because this is such a huge deal, and other things as well. The trade deal is signed, as you saw in that photo we just screen shared, and it's in 3 phases. And this does include intellectual property, so there's that, technology, agriculture purchase, which we just talked about. So this is real big for farmers. And of course, there's a lot of things about banking, currency, and financial services. There's also enforcement levels that are in place for this. But this is a quote here from the press secretary. This is a printout of the conversation that was had there. President Trump was talking about another big issue that they came to a conclusion on, and that is currency and foreign exchange. And so Secretary Mnuchin is explaining here what that entails, although I think it's a little bit vague, but he says, well, we've had a good discussion with Governor Yi, head of the People's Bank of China. That's their central bank. We've also had extensive discussions on financial services, opening up their markets to our financial services firms, so that we have pretty much almost a complete agreement on both those issues. As you know, Mr. President, currency has been a very big concern of yours since the campaign, and we have an agreement around transparency into the foreign exchange markets and free markets. So they're very pleased with that. And of course, the president commented, we've also made very good progress on technology transfer, and we'll put some technology transfer in phase 1. Phase 2 will start negotiations almost immediately after we've concluded phase 1 and papered it. And I think phase 1 should happen pretty quickly. So within the next few weeks, I think they're going to have have it papered up. So you have intellectual property. We have an agreement on intellectual property, financial services. The banks and all of the financial service companies will be very, very happy with what we've been able to get. And I think China is going to be very happy because they'll be served very well by the great institutions being able to go into China. And it's going to be a tremendous thing for banks and for financial service companies. I have to say, though, there's not any details on this. What exactly does this mean? Well, we know that the president's been very concerned about currency. We remember during the his campaign, he was talking about the importance of an even playing field in order for currencies, and the way to do that, to have fair trade is to have an even playing field for currencies. And when China, manipulated their currency and lowered their value of their currency, that made it unfair competition in terms of trade. So these are the issues that the president's quite concerned about. But they didn't talk about. We always have to remember what's not talked about, what the mainstream media is not talking about, and that is that there is going to be a new U.S. Treasury note. We did have the Red Dragon ambassador on a few weeks ago talking about how there is the dragon families who are the keepers, I suppose, of the gold on the planet, right? So it's not published anywhere, but that's how it works. And so the currency has to be, there's going to be a new U.S. Treasury note. There is a U.S. Treasury note. It's on the back screen on Forex. Is it on the front screen yet? I don't know. I've heard that it has been. I don't subscribe to Forex, so I don't see it. But anyway, these are big deals. These are big issues. We are going to have a new currency, so get ready for that. Because the dollar, the whole idea here is the president is trying to repurpose the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve is a system that hijacked. It's a central banking system that hijacked really the world, and so it caused wars, led to wars, and it made a very few number of people very, very wealthy. So what we're going to talk about also is the fact that the president has also 160 new judges within a couple of months, and within a few more months there will be 182 new federal. There will be 182 federal judges that the president has appointed. I also wanted to bring up that the president also was able to negotiate the port of Long Beach, California. That had been owned by the Chinese, can you believe it? By communist China. And so apparently we've gotten that port back. And what's so important about this is through some Q drops, we know that these ports, and through fake, I would say, well, let's say the rip-off companies of all the purses and Gucci and all the top brands and all of that, they would do exporting. But I mean, how much can purses weigh? These were very, very, very heavy cargo containers, and actually some had weapons and missiles in them. So there was arms dealing going on through there illegally, of course, and of course there was human trafficking. So this was very important. I mean, Jim, as a retired military officer, I mean, how crazy is it to have a foreign government own our ports? How crazy?
Louisa, it's obviously gives them a tremendous advantage here in terms of logistics, controlling supplies, and so forth. It really poses a covert threat that could be manifest if we actually got into a hot situation with China. They'd have a devastating advantage.
Yeah, how could they own a foot on our property? I mean, the sovereignty, isn't that a sovereignty question, Jim?
Well, of course, private ownership of property, but the point is it has to do with commerce, with large-scale commerce, trafficking, ships and containers and all that. And when they're in the position of control, a flow of supplies, if we were their enemy, that would put us at a tremendous disadvantage.
Exactly, folks. So, I mean, the president, if you don't realize, as Jim mentioned in the beginning of the report, that these rallies are phenomenal. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. There's so much support for what the president's doing. He's taking our sovereignty back from, we were sold down the river, folks, and it's coming out. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Let me go to the next point here, we have the president who took the Little League team, the world champion Little Leaguers. How cool is this, Jim, to have the president fly them on the plane back with him to DC? How awesome is that? Is that the coolest thing or what?
I love it.
I mean, these Little Leaguers, how cool. What? I mean, just amazing. These kids, you know, they worked real hard, and what a bonus.
Lifetime of retelling.
Absolutely, it certainly is. So let's go over to then what's coming up. Maria Bartiromo has reported that on next Friday now, or this coming Friday, of course, tomorrow is Columbus Day, so we want to wish everybody happy observance of Columbus Day, right? And I'm not going to get into the political correctness or incorrectness of that. Let's just keep going. But this Friday, the Inspector General Horowitz's IG report is done. It was a week ago that he announced that the investigation was complete. It's going to be released this Friday. It's supposed to go to Lindsey Graham first, where he's going to try. He says his first priority is to make sure that to have as much of the report declassified as possible. The Inspector General report covers more than just FISA abuse. They're saying it's as thick as a telephone book. You probably heard that already, Jim. We also have Mark Meadows of Georgia saying that it's going to be something like a rebuke of the FBI, and also there's going to be areas that warrant criminal referral. Now, what we do remember from the IG report is that the Hillary Clinton and Clinton Foundation was guilty, they found, of crimes against children. And this is where I think this is going to go. This is where it needs to go. If this is redacted, then the whole thing is just a scam. I'm telling you, it's like we're just going to get a slap in the face. It better not be redacted, because it was put publicly on the record that there were crimes against children, and that needs to be let out by the public. Now, Whitaker was supposedly doing this, or Huber, I'm sorry. Huber was appointed to look into that. Is Huber's report going to be part of this? I don't know. We'll wait and see. But it should be exposing that. In anticipation of that, let me also screen share what we have here. Hold on a second. I'm in the wrong screen. We have an updated list of sealed indictments, folks. And I'm going to screen share this because this is pretty impressive. And I want to just take a focus on a couple of areas. We're up to 124,558 sealed indictments total, okay? We have, let's just take a look at a few states here. Let's look at New Jersey. Ooh, the total is 3,582 sealed indictments. I wonder who that could be. I actually might know a few of them. And I'm sure I will not be sorry to see them go. Let's take a look at some other states. Look at the size, for the size of Maryland, so small, 3,548 sealed indictments. Massachusetts, 4,000. And let me tell you, California is over 20,000 in total. It's just amazing. There has been over about, let's see, what has been added? 5,794 from the last tally. This is as of September 30th, 2019, of course. Let's take a real quick graphic look at what this looks like, okay? This is a heat map. These researchers are phenomenal. You can see their names on the previous graph that I was sharing. These researchers are really amazing. And let's take a look. What was added in the past month? There was 150 added to New Jersey. There was 104 added to Maryland. There was, of course, 962 added to California. I mean, it's out of control. We have 817 added to Texas. You know, you're getting the idea here, because the total's on the right side and the left side is what was currently added. Jim, let's look at Wisconsin.
This is just fascinating, Louisa.
Look at this. 36 were added in the past month. Wisconsin has 751 sealed indictments. You're a lot less crooked in that state, Jim, than we are in New Jersey and California.
Oh, yeah.
And New York. Look at New York. New York's got, you know, what's the total? I can't actually read it, but it's 7,353 or 535. I mean, New York's pretty corrupt too, I'll have to say. Look, Texas, 12,000, but California tops it with over 20,000 sealed indictments. And where is this leading to? Well, where is this leading to? We know that eventually there's going to be some mass arrests. We know that last week this this was reported on one of, in fact, I did a special report with our Q decoder, Greg Hamilton. And this was activation for reserve components of the Marines. And I believe that this was also that there were several armed forces who are being called up. With all these indictments, Jim, I mean, 124,000, we need an army, don't we? Don't we need an army to do all these mass arrests?
Here, Louisa, or a Marine Corps.
Or a Marine Corps. Trump, when you brought up the rally, President Trump talked about how going into the Middle East was such a disaster, right? And he also mentioned in his rally that he was bringing them home and that we're going to be using them for another purpose. You just love how he trolls a deep state with these little caveats that some people don't pick up. But it's amazing. By the way, happy birthday to the U.S. Navy, 244th year. Happy birthday, U.S. Navy. I don't know if like Marines have Semper Fi. I don't know if Navy.
Birthday.
What do they have?
We have a separate birthday.
Yeah, Marines have a separate birthday, but I know they all have like their own little sign, like their own little slogan. You know, Marines is Semper Fi, and I don't know what Navy is. Maybe you know, Jim.
Oh.
No. Sail.
Hey.
What? Sail away? Castaway? I don't know. Whatever it is. Okay, and also, I know you're going to talk about Hunter Biden, aren't you?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll wait. I have a comment on that. And then let me just share the last thing that I want to support. You know that when we had Greg Hamilton on, we were showing how the comms, you have to learn the Q comms, not just the coincidences. So here I'm going to screen share real quick his Twitter page, because there's a lot of very interesting comms that he's sharing with us. He's a decoder and he's brilliant. He's really very, very brilliant. And there's a special one here I wanted to share. But let's just take a look. This was only 23 hours ago. He says, I talk to Q and Q talks back. Timestamp and gap code, remember, is how he does this. We're 8:07, so he went to Q drop 8:07 this time, which looks pretty straightforward. And for this one, the Q drop date is February 22nd, 2:22. See, I don't know how he knows to do this, but he knows how to do this, right? He says, what's been in the news this week, right? What's been in the news is that Code Monkey, who is works with the Q board, or the HChan board, right? They're going up, they're trying to get themselves up and running. I think this week there was going to be a test, or there has been tests. And of course, look, we have a reference here in this particular post to QS Code Monkey to increase HChan server resources. So, you know, here he says the endless wars must end, but that's not always the message that Q is communicating. That's maybe what the president is saying, but it's the timestamps between the president's tweets that lead us to the Q drop that we need to look at, and other things. There's apparently 43 other ways to combine what the message is, but it's not a coincidence. This is on target. We're talking about 8chan. We're talking about 8chan coming back up maybe this week or at the end of this week, and so and that would be timely. With that IG report coming out, would be very timely. So this is a timely message, and they're all very timely. And this one I wanted to share because this is the next one. This was 22 hours ago. This was the actual photo Greg took. Sorry, that wasn't it there. This is the photo that Greg took that Q shared on the that Q posted. This is Greg's beautiful day, Patriots United. He happened to just look up in the sky, and there it was, a Q. I mean, you can't get a bigger message than that. There was this halo around the sun, but there was like this Q, this little foot coming out of there. And of course, he posted it on his Twitter page, and Q picked it up and reposted it in this post right here. So this is the one we should have shared during the interview, but it's okay. But you know, he knows that he's in communication with them, and this is really important, because all of these Q drops now are starting to reveal information for people, for the Anons, and for you know, the Great Awakening here. So here we have more messages. You need to go here and check it out for yourself, because there's too many to really go into detail about. Here they're talking about military intel and state secrets. Here they're talking about sniffer programs. Here they're talking about military intelligence, stay vigilant for false flag events. Because you know, folks, what happens every time bad news is about to break? There's false flags, right, Jim? That's the precursor. So like the timing thing. So this is here. The hard part is waiting for the Great Awakening. But folks, it is happening. It's happening, and you can see that by the mass crowds that the president has at the rallies. This is important. I want you to go to his Twitter page and check out what he's communicating here. Here we have Trey Gowdy. This one refers to Trey Gowdy being added to the president's legal team. So this is amazing. Trey Gowdy's a bulldog, and you want him on the right side though. But he's a bulldog. He's really really smart. Here you have more comms talking about that the president has. The president has a plan for us, okay? And here, you know, the plans I have for you, declared the Lord. So there's a lot of reference to scripture in this as well. Because you have to have faith. You have to trust the plan. If you don't have faith, if you haven't learned to have faith in any other way, an area of your life, this is the time to do it. So here's some requests for some proofs. Here again, God bless the United States. And of course, the president was saying this at the rally. The U.S. Navy, of course, he's talking about the birthday today. And this was a very, very interesting proof as well. This is very dangerous. This is no joke. I mean, this is very dangerous. Traitors, justice is coming for you. So according to these drops, justice is coming. So just some more confirmation tweets between he and the military. MSM falling into another trap laid by Coup, and they do every time. Trust the plan. Here we're talking about direct attack today by clowns in America. Everybody knows that's the CIA. We know that JFK had quoted he was going to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces, and I think that they're doing it all by themselves, and they don't have one of their comrades in office right now. So here's WikiLeaks in the military, and then, you know, you can follow this and find out what's going on, and there's certain regarding some journalists here. So folks, I wanted to kind of bring this to your attention. These are really important Q drops. I think that there's going to be a lot exposed about the Clinton Foundation. Like I said, if this IG report doesn't contain this, then I don't have faith in Attorney General Barr or what Sessions did before or what Huber's doing, because it's got to, the American people have to know the truth, and we have a right to know. Be prepared. Here is another post saying, be prepared. You may get this emergency notification, this presidential alert, or an emergency message system. If we start these mass arrests, there will be, I'm sure we will be notified if there's going to be, expect some National Guard, expect to see a presence on the street. It is to keep you all safe. It's to keep us all safe. It's not anything to be fearful of. Okay, so this is all confirming this. So, you know, Clinton whistleblower, all this is coming back because we're going to start hearing about the Clinton Foundation from this IG report, if it's going to be an honest report and if it's going to disclose what it needs to disclose. Crimes against children, we want to see what that is. We know about the fake Russia collusion. We know about the fake dossier. We know that they tricked the FISA court judge. Of course, you know, the judge should have known a little bit better anyway, but done his due diligence to make sure that everything, you know, all that they knew where the source, the funding was coming from, which was, of course, the Clinton Foundation, or the DNC rather. So, you know, somebody dropped the ball, which is just so too common in our judicial system, unfortunately. And so here, I mean, countdown, we're getting ready. This is the countdown, folks. So get yourself ready. Check out these, are you ready for arrests? You see, this is no coincidence. These are comms, and they're trying to communicate. Greg's Twitter page has really become the alternative board if you understand how to read his posts until 8chan can get back up on another server. Okay, Anons have memes ready and so forth. This is going to go. Expect more censorship. This is basically what they're warning us. And be proud and stay united. And that's really the most important message that we have. There are drones. We did hear about, Jim, there was some speculation about some things that are going on over in California. I did see video of sewers on fire. And this is I cannot confirm this report, but there's one report stating that it's possible that the blackout occurred so that they could find the underground tunnel systems, which have their own independent electrical source. Okay, so using ground penetrating radar, they could locate when there's a blackout, then there's no electricity going on, and if you can find through infrared and other sources, other heat sources underground in the tunnels, then you can find your tunnels. And it's very possible that's what they're doing to take out the trafficking tunnels and the drug smuggling tunnels and things of that nature. I cannot confirm that, but it is. I did see this report a few times, and basically, Jim, I think we all need to start getting ready, because I think it's game time, and it's about time. As far as I'm concerned, it's about time. And I know everything has to be done at a certain time, but I think that we're getting ready. So I would just hope people don't panic when you see something. You see, military reservists, you see Army, you see National Guard in the street. Just know that they're there to protect us. This is not Agenda 2030. It's not, the New World Order is not going to make it here. I'm sorry, they're just not going to do it. So don't be afraid. But, in case, be prepared. All right, Jim, that's what I've got for today.
Well, that's all terrific and fascinating, Louisa, and it might explain why the Democrats' hysteria over impeachment has,
talk a little louder, Jim?
Become so frantic. Here we have Chuck Todd scolding a Wisconsin Republican senator for pushing what Chuck Todd regards as a Fox News conspiracy, but which appears to be completely factual to me. In a heated exchange Sunday's Meet the Press, Chuck Todd immediately called out Republican Senator Ron Johnson for raising a conspiracy theory, they're calling it, that's continuously mentioned on Fox News, but it's not a theory at all when you get to Joe Biden admitting before the Council on Foreign Relations that he had threatened the Ukrainian government that if the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting $1 billion in foreign aid. $1 billion in foreign aid. And he gave him 6 hours. And he sat there and he said, well, guess what, son of a bitch? They fired him, and he was gloating about it. This was a prosecutor who was investigating the gas company where Hunter Biden, his son, had a cushy $50,000 a month, that's $600,000 a year position, even though he has no discernible qualifications. Here's a video that the president had put up that Twitter took down to my astonishment because Biden has insisted he doesn't even know this Ukrainian gas executive, that he was out on the golf course with his son and that very gas executive. So they don't want you to know. Meanwhile, here's an article about Zero Head. There was a full-on Trump-Ukraine blow-up on Sunday's Meet the Press. Chuck Todd quick to slam what he called Fox News conspiracy propaganda stop. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, launched an offensive Trump when pressed by Todd over some of his recent comments, made firmly denying the Democrats' allegation the White House withheld military aid to Ukraine in quid pro quo situation related to Biden's dealings there. Johnson told Todd, you've got former CIA Director John Brennan on. You ought to ask Director Brennan, what did Peter Strzok mean when he texted Lisa Page on December 15, 2016, quote, and he was about to talk about the insurance policy when Chuck Todd intervened. This is talking over a United States senator who's the featured guest on your show. What does this have to do with Ukraine, Todd interrupted. It has everything to do with Ukraine, Johnson retorted. Todd then cut in during the senator's explanation, again rudely, improperly, revealing he was impoverished in dealing with the facts that Johnson was reporting, leveling a conspiracy theorist charge on him. I have no idea where Fox News propaganda stuff is popping up on here, Todd said. I have no idea. In my opinion, he was burnishing his credentials as a CIA spokesman. Remember, The agency began infiltrating the media back in the 1950s, where by 1975, William Colby, then its director, testified to Congress that the agency owned everyone of any significance in the media. The situation is worse today. Chuck Todd is obviously someone of significance in the media. It follows that with overwhelming probability he's owned by the CIA. His behavior in this instance confirmed it. So we have these reports in the Wisconsin State Journal and elsewhere insisting that there's no evidence that Joe Biden or Hunter have done anything wrong. It's completely outrageous. I wrote a letter to the editor knowing it would almost certainly not appear in print. How we know Ron Johnson has it right, editor. The media doesn't want the American people to know the background to Trump's conversation with Zelensky because it blows their cover and destroys their narrative. One, Bill Clinton signed a treaty with Ukraine in 1998 for mutual assistance in criminal matters, where Trump was not only permitted but obligated to report crimes committed there. Two, Joe Biden boasted of having the Ukrainian prosecutor fired by threatening to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid and gave the government 6 hours to get it done. Three, we have him on video explaining that he actually did what Trump is accused of doing, where the Ukrainian prosecutor in a sworn affidavit has confirmed it. Four, Trump immediately released a transcript which anyone can read, and there's no basis for concluding that he had done anything wrong when you know 1 through 3. Five, voters in Iowa are not being affected by the nonstop 24/7 fabricated reports about this, where they completely appropriately regard Ukraine Gate as Russia Gate 2.0. Six, comparisons with Nixon are inaccurate because Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike supported his impeachment, but Trump supporters, and I dare say a large segment of independents, are sticking with him. Seven, Chuck Todd revealed his bias in attacking Ron Johnson, who is a good man doing his best to sort things out and expose the truth of the matter, while Todd is promoting fake news. Representative Al Green, Democrat of Texas, explained what's up. I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected. That's why his party and their media allies are playing us. Here's a political commercial that hits it right out of the park. Watch this.
Joe Biden promised Ukraine $1 billion if they fire the prosecutor investigating his son's company.
If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Son of a bitch. Got fired.
But when President Trump asks Ukraine to investigate corruption, the Democrats want to impeach him, and their media lapdogs fall in line. They lost the election. Now they want to steal this one. Don't let them.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
He's got it exactly right. Moreover, it turns out the situation is even worse. A Ukrainian member of parliament has reported that Joe Biden was paid $900,000. Louisa, that's just short of $1 million by Charisma. In a bombshell admission, Ukrainian MP Andriy Derkach revealed Wednesday that former Vice President Joe Biden received $900,000 from Burisma Group for lobbying activities, citing materials related to an investigation. Former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden received $900,000 for lobbying activities from Burisma Group. Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada member Andriy Derkach said, citing investigation materials. He publicized documents which, as he said, described the mechanism of getting money by Biden Sr. at a press conference at Interfax, Ukraine's press secretary, on Wednesday. This was the transfer of Burisma Group's funds for lobbying activities personally to Joe Biden through a lobbying company. Funds in the amount of $900,000 were transferred to the U.S.-based company Rosemont Seneca Partners, which, according to open sources, including the New York Times, is affiliated with Biden. The payment reference was for consultative services. That must have been pretty good consultation, Louisa, to be worth nearly $1 million.
I see.
According to the documents, Burisma paid no less than 16.5 million to the former Polish president, who became an independent director at Burisma Holdings in 2014, Aleksander Kwasniewski, chairman of the Burisma Board of Independent Directors, Alan Apter, Burisma Independent Director, Devin Archer, and Hunter Biden, who joined the Burisma Board of Directors in 2014. Where Joe Biden actively assisted closing criminal cases into the activity of former Ukrainian ecology minister Mykola Zalewski, who is the founder and owner of Burisma Group. Meanwhile, it becomes clear why they're all trying to destroy Trump. Romney, Kerry, Biden, McCain, Pelosi, Schiff, Mueller, and Hillary are all tied to sketchy Ukraine deals. No wonder they want to impeach President Trump. Mitt Romney's top advisor, Joseph Coffer Black, for example, joined the board of the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma, while Hunter Biden was also on the board. Hunter was taking a salary of $50,000 a month, that's $600,000 a year from Burisma, and was simultaneously engaged in a relationship with John Kerry's stepson, Chris Hines, and mobster Whitey Bulger's nephew in a private equity firm that allegedly appeared to be laundering millions of dollars in foreign money from China and the Ukraine through Latvia and back to the United States. You let me know when you want.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment right now.
Okay.
I mean, Jim, does Hunter Biden have a PhD?
No, I don't think he's even a college graduate, Louisa.
Is he McKnight University professor emeritus?
Oh no, he's not.
Is he a retired Marine Corps officer?
No, none of this.
Jim, do you get $1 million for consultation services?
I'm trying to say I don't, but you know,
If anybody
knows checks.
If anybody should get $1 million for consultation services, it should be you, my friend. I mean, come on, what a joke. If this is such a joke. Hey, I mean, honestly, the president said that Hunter Biden walked away with $1.5 billion from China, too.
I know. And Louisa, the latest report just today, he's stepping down from its board of directors,
Right.
given the attention. No doubt because the company wants to dissociate itself with someone who is as corrupt as Hunter Biden. It was obviously a huge mistake to put him on the board to begin with, but they would have let it go had it not been exposed.
And tonight is the Hunter's Moon, isn't it? The full moon, Hunter's Moon. And everyone's asking. President said at his rally, the most popular T-shirt that was sold was "Where's Hunter?" Probably had a picture of a full moon on it too. So that's amazing. He also said there was he received $168,000 a month, which you reported, from Ukraine, and supposedly a $3 million payment from Ukraine as well. And he doesn't have a college degree, and he doesn't have, military service like distinguished like yourself, Jim. And he ought to pay you. I think he ought to give you that money. That's what I think.
Very thoughtful, Louise. I find it difficult to rebut. Here we have more, much more. Pundit on Trump's impeachment, one of the greatest miscalculations in the history of presidential elections. Democrats have lashed out at President Donald Trump, accusing him of breaking his oath of office by calling on China to investigate the former vice president and now Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Trump confessed to his violation of his oath of office when he asked China and Ukraine to help look into the Biden family. China should start an investigation into the Bidens because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine, Trump told reporters. Meanwhile, on September 24th, when Mrs. Pelosi officially launched a formal impeachment inquiry, Biden and his family seemed, the Ukrainian leader, Joe Biden and his family seemed determined. But Pelosi hasn't always been so keen on impeachment. In a video from 1998, when it was Democratic President Bill Clinton who was facing impeachment, she accused Republicans of being paralyzed with hatred, not judging the president with fairness, but impeaching him with a vengeance. Exactly what's going on today. Scott Bennett, a political analyst and former U.S. Army officer, believes that Democrats have made a mistake by launching impeachment proceedings against the U.S. leader. Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, and others, have made a major error in judgment and miscalculated the effect of this impeachment inquiry on the American public, Bennett said. He added, this will only play in Trump's favor. Instead of turning against Donald Trump, the majority of the American public will turn against the Democrats and see them as once again creating a fabulous lie and fraud. Meanwhile, John Solomon from the Hill drops a bomb. It was omitted from the whistleblower report. Ukraine was reopening a probe into Hunter Biden's company back in February. John Solomon, I can confirm to you tonight, U.S. government had open source intelligence and was aware that as early as February of 2019, the Ukrainian government was planning on reopening a Burisma investigation. This was long before the president even imagined having a call with President Zelensky. In fact, it's before President Zelensky was even elected. This is a significant shift in the factual timeline. There is information that was omitted from the whistleblower's complaint that makes a major difference. Meanwhile, President Trump impeached Schiff, not me. He continued his assault against a Democrat-led impeachment inquiry when he called for the impeachment of Representative Adam Schiff. In a series of tweets, Trump bashed both Schiff and the whistleblower, whose concerns about Trump using his office for political purposes kicked off the impeachment effort. But remember, this guy wasn't a bona fide whistleblower. They even changed the form so he could report hearsay rather than anything of which he had direct personal knowledge. He should be impeached for fraud, Trump wrote in response to a Republican lawmaker's tweet about Schiff, who's chairman of the House Intel Committee. Prior to that, Trump took aim at the whistleblower, presumably the first of two who have come forward with concerns stemming from a July 25th phone call between Trump and Zelensky. The whistleblower's facts have been so incorrect about my no-pressure conversation with the Ukrainian president, and now the conflict of interest and involvement with a Democrat candidate, that he or she should be exposed and questioned properly. This is no whistleblower. Moreover, a whistleblower's lawyer is a big Democrat. The whistleblower has ties to one of my Democrat opponents. Why does the intelligence community inspector general allow this scam to continue? Meanwhile, a political cartoon that captures the situation. We have to impeach the president so you can find out what he did. Trump is guilty of blank. This is an impeachment looking for some offense on which to ground itself. Louisa, it's completely embarrassing. Meanwhile, White House declares war on impeachment inquiry. The White House has declared war on the House impeachment, announcing it would not cooperate with what it called an illegitimate effort to overturn the results of the 2016 election and setting the stage for a constitutional clash with far-reaching consequences. There's a letter to which I shall turn momentarily, but first, Louisa, your opportunity to comment on what has just now been reported.
Well, in the press gaggles, the president has repeatedly said and referred to this as an impeachment hoax. Just like the Russian collusion was a hoax, it's all a hoax, folks. Don't you get it? It's a hoax, folks. It's a hoax. Hokey pokey. It's a hokey pokey hoax. It's just, you gotta laugh because they're so desperate, Jim. They're trying anything and nothing's working.
Now, here's a marvelous, in my opinion, marvelous letter the White House has sent to the leaders of the impeachment movement. I write on behalf of President Donald J. Trump in response to your numerous legally unsupported demands made as part of what you have labeled contrary to the Constitution of the United States and all past bipartisan precedent as an impeachment inquiry. As you know, you have designed and implemented your inquiry in a manner that violates fundamental fairness and constitutionally mandated due process. For example, you have denied the president the right to cross-examine witnesses, to call witnesses, to receive transcripts of testimony, to have access to evidence, to have counsel present, and many other basic rights guaranteed to all Americans. You have conducted your proceedings in secret. You have violated civil liberties and the separation of powers by threatening executive branch officials, claiming that you will seek to punish those who exercise fundamental constitutional rights and prerogatives. All of this violates the Constitution, the rule of law, and every past precedent. Never before in our history has the House of Representatives, under control of either political party, taken the American people down the dangerous path you seem determined to pursue. Put simply, you seek to overturn the results of the 2016 election and deprive the American people of the president they have freely chosen. Many Democrats now apparently view impeachment not only as a means to undo the democratic results of the last election, but as a strategy to influence the next, which is barely more than a year away. As one member of Congress explained, he's concerned that if we don't impeach the president, he will get reelected. Your highly partisan and unconstitutional effort threatens grave and lasting damage to our democratic institutions, to our system of free election, and to the American people. And of course, he was alluding to an interview with Representative Val Green. For these reasons, President Trump and his administration reject your baseless, unconstitutional efforts to overturn the democratic process. Your unprecedented actions have left the president with no choice. In order to fulfill his duties to the American people, the Constitution, the executive branch, and all future occupants of the office of the presidency, President Trump and his administration cannot participate in your partisan and unconstitutional inquiry under these circumstances. One, your inquiry is constitutionally invalid and violates basic due process rights and the separation of powers. Your inquiry is constitutionally invalid and a separation of due process. In the history of our nation, the House of Representatives has never attempted to launch an impeachment inquiry against the president without a majority of the House taking political accountability for that decision by voting to authorize such a dramatic constitutional step. Your House leadership claims to have initiated the gravest inter-branch conflict contemplated under our Constitution by means of nothing more than a press conference at which the Speaker of the House simply announces an official impeachment inquiry. Your contrived process is unprecedented in the history of the nation and lacks the necessary authorization for a valid impeachment proceeding. The committee's inquiry also suffers from a separate fatal defect. Despite Speaker Pelosi's commitment to treat the president with fairness, the committees have not established any procedure affording the president even the most basic protections demanded by due process under the Constitution and by fundamental fairness. Chairman Nadler of the House Judiciary has expressly acknowledged, at least when the president was a member of his own party, that the power of impeachment demands a rigorous level of due process, and that in this context, due process means the right to be informed of the law of the charges against you, the right to confront the witnesses against you, to call your own witnesses, and to have the assistance of counsel. All of these procedures have been abandoned here. These due process rights are not a matter of discretion for the committees to dispense with at will. To the contrary, they are constitutional requirements. The Supreme Court has recognized that due process protections apply to all congressional investigations. Indeed, it has been recognized that the Due Process Clause applies to impeachment proceedings. And precedent for the rights to cross-examine witnesses, call witnesses, and present evidence dates back nearly 150 years. Yet the committees have decided to deny the president these elementary rights and protections, which form the basis of the American judicial system and are protected by the Constitution. No citizen, including the president, should be treated this unfairly. To comply with the Constitution's demand, appropriate procedures would include, at a minimum, the right to see all evidence, to present evidence, to call witnesses, to have counsel present at all hearings, to cross-examine all witnesses, to make objections related to the examination of witnesses or the admissibility of testimony and evidence, and to respond to evidence and testimony. Likewise, the committees must provide for the disclosure of all evidence favorable to the president and all evidence bearing on the credibility of witnesses called to testify in the inquiry. The committee's current procedures provide none of these basic constitutional rights. In addition, the House has not provided the committee's ranking members with the authority to issue subpoenas. The right of the minority to issue subpoenas subject to the same rules as the majority has been the standard bipartisan practice in all recent resolutions authorizing presidential impeachment inquiries. The House's failure to provide co-equal subpoena power in this case ensures that any inquiry will be nothing more than a one-sided effort by House Democrats to gather information favorable to their views and to selectively release it as only they determine. The House's utter disregard for the established procedural safeguards followed in past impeachment inquiries shows that the current proceedings are nothing more than an unconstitutional exercise in political theater. 2, the invalid impeachment inquiry plainly seeks to reverse the election of 2016 and to influence the election of 2020. The effort to impeach Trump, without regard to any evidence of his actions in office, is a naked political strategy that began the day he was inaugurated and perhaps even before. In fact, your transparent rush to judgment, lack of democratically accountable authorization, and violation of basic rights in the current proceedings make clear the illegitimate partisan purpose of this purported impeachment inquiry. The founders, however, did not create the extraordinary mechanism of impeachment so it could be used by a political party that feared for its prospects against the sitting president in the next election. The decision as to who will be elected president in 2020 should rest with the people of the United States, exactly where the Constitution places it. Democrats themselves used to recognize the dire implications of impeachment for the nation. For example, in the past, Chairman Nadler has explained, quote, the effect of impeachment is to overturn the popular will of the voters. We must not overturn an election and remove a president from office, except to defend our system of government or our constitutional liberties against a dire threat. And we must not do so without an overwhelming consensus of the American people. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties and opposed by another. 3, there is no legitimate basis for your impeachment inquiry. Instead, the committee's actions raise serious questions. It is transparent that you have resorted to such unprecedented and unconstitutional procedures because you know that a fair process would expose the lack of any basis for your inquiry. Your current effort is founded on a completely appropriate call on July 25th, 2019, between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine. Without waiting to see what was actually said on the call, a press conference was held announcing an impeachment inquiry based on falsehoods and misinformation about the call. To rebut those falsehoods and to provide transparency to the American people, President Trump secured agreement from the government of Ukraine and took the extraordinary step of declassifying and publicly releasing the record of the call. The record clearly established that the call was completely appropriate, that the president did nothing wrong, and that there is no basis for an impeachment inquiry. In a joint press conference shortly after the call's public release, President Zelensky agreed that the call was appropriate. In addition, the Department of Justice announced that officials there had reviewed the call after a referral for an alleged campaign finance law violation and found no such violation. For the foregoing reasons, the president cannot allow your constitutionally illegitimate proceedings to distract him and those in the executive branch from their work on behalf of the American people. The president has a country to lead. The American people elected him to do this job and remains focused on fulfilling his promises to the American people. He has important work that he must continue on their behalf, both at home and around the world.
Absolutely.
Continuing strong economic growth, extending historically low levels of unemployment, negotiating trade deals, fixing our broken immigration system, lowering prescription drug prices, and addressing mass shooting violence. We hope that in light of the many deficiencies we've identified in your proceedings, you will abandon the current invalid efforts to pursue an impeachment inquiry and join the president in focusing on the many important issues that matter to the American people. In my opinion, a masterful presentation. Meanwhile, Pelosi faces a tough decision on formal impeachment vote as case against Trump comes under pressure. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is in a tough spot. After caving into pressure from a party to launch an impeachment inquiry based on a CIA whistleblower report that Trump abused his office to pressure Ukraine, Pelosi must now decide whether to proceed with a formal vote and mounting evidence that Trump did nothing wrong. Trump has pushed for a vote which would allow Republicans to issue subpoenas as well as grant the White House the ability to cross-examine witnesses. To that end, the White House outlined In a Tuesday letter, they will refuse to cooperate with an inquiry that is invalid due to Pelosi's refusal to make it official. The letter, which I have just read. Never before in the history of the House of Representatives, under the control of either political party, taken the American people down the dangerous path you seem determined to pursue, wrote White House counsel Pat Cipollone. Kevin McCarthy, think about it. If you went through a trial but weren't allowed to call any witnesses, that's what Speaker Pelosi is doing to President Trump right now.
Right.
The entire process is a sham.
It is a sham. And there's 4 legal reasons for impeachment. There has to be a conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. What this is a coup d'etat. That's what this is. Folks, we've been telling you in every POTUS report what the mainstream media is not going to tell you, and that is there literally is a civil war between 2 factions of the government, within our government, okay? And this is literally a coup. They don't have anything on Trump, and this is why President has to act at this point, or he will be overthrown by them, because they're going to do things. They're not going to do it legally, Jim. They're going to do it the way they always do it. They're going to, fudge it. They're going to, like you said, I mean, it's invalid. It's constitutionally invalid, Jim. And so they're denying this man even, basic civil, due process, like you said. It's
they're going to lose the election. He's going to be reelected. Their only choice is to impeach. Otherwise, they are going to lose the election. And I guarantee you,
Jim,
now assured that will happen. I think by a landslide, because the American people aren't going to be played. They've heard this cry of wolf too many times before.
I think the Democrats should just, succeed now. You know what I mean? I think they should, concede. I'm sorry, that's the word, concede now. They should concede now. They've already lost. They should just concede now and save the money.
I think you got it, Louisa. We're going to see $1 billion spent trying to elect a Democrat alternative to President Trump. It's not going to happen.
Is this the second whistleblower, Jim?
Yeah. Meanwhile, Bolton contacted whistleblower prior to filing complaint suggesting an attempted coup. In the hours after National Security Advisor John Bolton was fired by President Trump, he immediately began calling longtime political operatives in Washington. Many of those calls were made to Democrats, and many of them to the national security establishment. One of those was to the intelligence agency whistleblower who filed the now famous complaint pertaining to the president's call. The complaint was filed only weeks before, on August 12th. The source alleges the whistleblower was given the information that comprises the contents of the complaint from Bolton himself, which, if true, would constitute an extraordinary breach of national security and an indictable offense punishable by imprisonment. But that appears to be exactly what happened here. Meanwhile, the intelligence community's Inspector General Michael Atkinson has indicated that the whistleblower was found to have a political bias in favor of Biden's presidential campaign. The attorney who represents a whistleblower contributed to Biden's campaign and formerly worked for Senator Charles Schumer, the Democratic leader of the Senate. While on the phone with one former government official who currently works on K Street, Bolton admitted he was furious with the president, whom he lambasted with obscenities for more than 5 minutes. The president would learn his lesson, he told the lobbyist, who chalked it up to a disgruntled employee venting over his unexpected termination. But now it appears that Bolton is organizing a coup d'etat to oust President Trump from office. Besides Bolton's contacts with journalists at major media outlets, particularly the Washington Post, under the ownership of Jeff Bezos, to whom Bolton is widely thought to have leaked information from inside the Trump administration throughout the duration of his tenure. Bolton has aggressively pushed for military strike against Iran, putting him at odds with a president who opposes unnecessary large-scale military intervention. In the days prior to his termination, he was engaged in a heated battle inside the White House over the administration response to Iran's attack on Saudi oil infrastructure earlier this month, except that Iran has denied any responsibility. It appears to have been done by the Houthis, only to be blamed on Iran. Meanwhile, Lee Stranahan, has observed the Ukraine whistleblowers are actually CIA agents, where now the first whistleblower was dependent on another source who it appears is coming forward as a second whistleblower, and who indeed appears to be John Bolton himself. Here's a story about it. I knew John Bolton was going to be trouble the moment President Trump hired him. Nothing good was ever going to come from having John Bolton as national security advisor. Fortunately, Trump rejected almost every major recommendation he made during his entire tenure. If Trump had gone along with Bolton's agenda, we'd probably be at war right now. Being so close to the levers of power, being unable to move his agenda forward time after time was very frustrating for Bolton. And since he was fired by Trump, he's been on a revenge tour. What would Bolton go so far as to completely betray Trump by becoming the second whistleblower regarding the controversial phone call? There's now a lot of speculation among conservatives that this could be the case. And Bolton has not publicly denied being the second whistleblower. That doesn't mean he is guilty, but if I were President Trump, he would be the #1 suspect on my list. Of course, in Washington, there are always more suspects, but it's interesting to note that Trump has been very suspicious of Bolton for quite some time. One veteran political consultant in Washington tells Coburn that Trump is afraid Bolton is a mastermind behind all the damaging leaks on his secret dealings with the Ukrainians, a whistleblower's deep throat, if you will. This, he believes, is why Trump's cheerleader in the Senate, Lindsey Graham, keeps asking who is feeding the CIA whistleblower who came forward with details of a call between Trump and the Ukrainian president. Graham tweeted, "It is imperative we find out which White House official talked to the whistleblower and why. Why didn't they lodge the complaint?" And thanks to the Hill, we also know that John Bolton opposed the phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky while he was still a member of the administration. Louisa.
Oh, bingo.
There's any doubt about it. Bolton is
No.
the dirty bird in all of this.
Well, there's a reason he got fired. Look, Trump is playing Sun Tzu, 4D, 5D chess here. I mean, he keeps his friends close and he keeps his enemies closer. He knew what he was doing, bringing Bolton on. A lot of people, and I remember us talking about this too on a previous report, how concerning it was that he was bringing in these neocons. But there was a method to his madness, so we've got that figured out.
Well, Louise, I'll tell you one thing. Because of this whole brouhaha, they have all exposed themselves. They have exposed themselves. Everyone who is a deep state, enemy of the state, traitor, is now standing exposed because they're all coming out in this massive onslaught against Trump, which has no justification whatsoever, which is why it's such a tell. There are 5 questions that frighten impeachment focused Democrats. As a phony impeachment investigation targeting President Trump rumbles on, there's really no definitive list of questions that yet remain unanswered. Were anyone to complete such a list, it would probably start with 5 questions that strike at the heart of the entire affair. 1, Ukraine DNC connection. It seems curious, to say the least, that neither the FBI nor former special counsel Robert Mueller discovered the successful 2016 efforts by the Democratic National Committee to reach out to the Ukraine government to provide dirt on Trump and his campaign associates. Considering that both of those investigations were focused on uncovering a possible conspiracy with a foreign power to influence a presidential election, why was the Ukraine DNC connection not looked into? It can only be gross incompetence or a deliberate decision to overlook that vital piece of the puzzle. We know which is which. Second, anonymous witnesses. The so-called whistleblower came forward with a complaint about the nature of the president's phone conversation with the new Ukraine president is hardly a credible witness, since she or he had no firsthand knowledge of the call. Democrats are already making elaborate but secretive plans to extract testimony from this individual. Can his or her identity be kept from the public and from the president indefinitely? Third, another whistleblower. At least one additional whistleblower has now come forward, according to reports. But does this fact change anything? Indeed, the outrage over the phone call between Trump and Zelensky appears even more fabricated the more that anonymous individuals come forward with complaints. Already, it is highly suspicious that almost 3 weeks passed between the phone call itself and the filing of a complaint about what was said Additional complaints filed even later hardly bolster the credibility of the case against Trump. 4, Schiff's role. How is Representative Adam Schiff's role in this latest assault on the president compromise the entire process? Schiff has been less than forthcoming about his knowledge of events or the extent to which his own staffers worked with a whistleblower even before any complaint was filed with the intelligence community's inspector general. As if the congressman were not already looking foolish and dishonest. His performance at a recent hearing was reason enough for Schiff to be compelled to recuse himself. During the event, he read out his own version of what Trump said to Zelensky, which bore no resemblance to the now public transcript. The very idea that Schiff has either the capability or the desire to conduct a fair and objective investigation is utterly laughable. 5, window of opportunity. How big is the window of opportunity for congressional Democrats to impeach a president? They have so far avoided making the process official, but articles of impeachment must at some point be brought to the floor of the House for a vote. Once the opposition party chooses its presidential nominee, the campaign for the White House begins in earnest. And impeaching Trump during an election campaign is going to be seen as purely an attempt to influence the 2020 election, even by those Americans who do not already see it as such. Democrats, therefore, have around 8 months to conclude their investigation, draw up articles of impeachment, and bring them up for debate and vote. The holiday season will take a bite out of that time, so the clock is ticking. The chances of impeachment going before the Senate, before the 2020 Democratic National Convention, are slim to none. These 5 basic questions, when answered objectively, determine whether there's any realistic chance of Trump's enemies removing him from office before the next election, or this entire exercise is for Democrats a political catastrophe. Meanwhile, there's a lot more about the whistleblower probably isn't. What's interesting about this, Louisa, is this article and all the skepticism it espouses comes from Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone, who's generally regarded as a left-wing columnist. So here he is taking the whole thing apart. Let's look at what we know about the first whistleblower in Ukraine Gate. He or she is a CIA official detailed to the U.S. The account is at least partially based on the CIA officer's own experience, made up substantially by information from more than a half dozen U.S. officials and the private accounts of my colleague. He or she was instantly celebrated as a whistleblower by networks and major newspapers, which is very significant. That last detail caught the eye of Karakau, who is a real whistleblower, former CIA counterterrorism official who blew the whistles on the agency's torture program. It took me and my lawyers a full year to get the media to stop calling me a CIA leaker, John Karakau, he said. That's how long it took for me to be called a whistleblower. Karakau's crime was talking to ABC News and the New York Times about the CIA's torture program. We're talking to American journalists about the CIA. Our federal government charged Karakau with espionage. That absurd count was ultimately dropped, but he still did 23 months at a federal correctional institute, Loretto in Western Pennsylvania. When Karakau first saw the whistleblower complaint, his immediate reaction was to wonder what kind of CIA officer the person in question was. If you spend a career in the CIA, you see all kinds of subterfuge and lies and crimes. This person went through a whole career, and this is the thing he objects to, meaning he has to know there's a whole lot more going on here. It's fair to wonder if this is a one-person effort. Even a CIA official, Robert Baer, no friend of Trump, said as much in an earlier conference on CNN with Brooks Baldwin. Baer. That's what I find remarkable. This whistleblower knew about that, this attempt to cover up. This is a couple of people. It isn't just one Baldwin. And on the people point, if the allegation is true, Bob, what does it say that the White House officials' lawyers wanted to cover it up? There, you know, my guess, it's a palace coup against Trump. And who knows what else they know at this point. That sounds about right. Actual whistleblowers are alone. The Ukraine complaint seems to be the work of a group of people with significant institutional power, not only in the intel community, but the Democratic Party and the commercial press. It's very contrived. The current scandal is a caricature of such episodes. Imagine the mania on the airwaves if Donald Trump were to have his Justice Department arrest a whistleblower and charge him with 35 years of offenses, as Thomas Drake faced. Trump, incidentally, still might try something like this. It's what any autocrat of this school would do, for starters, to mutiny intelligence officials within his own government. It's fascinating that Matt Taibbi is providing a basis for skepticism, because I guarantee you he's coming from the opposite side of the political. He ought to be supporting it, but he's exercising his intelligence and objectivity to damn it.
I'm sorry, Jim. I had a comment I was going to make, and it's getting a little late here. What was I going to say? Hold on a second. The president keeps winning. That's what I have to say. That's my comment for now. He keeps winning. We're not worried.
Meanwhile, Democrats' unprecedented moves to hide the whistleblower's identity are being met with strong pushback and new revelation. Citing three officials familiar with the deliberations, House Democrats heading up the investigation are considering conducting the whistleblower's interview at a remote location and obscuring his appearance and voice. That's because it's John Bolton. And it would be so obvious this is political and arranged and a stunt. A highly unusual arrangement for the whistleblower's testimony underscores the toxicity between Republicans and Democrats. The House Intel Committee, which was once considered among the most bipartisan, but is now spearheading the diverse impeachment investigation. One individual familiar with the discussion said this is the first time the panel has had to take such extraordinary measures to protect a witness, including from their GOP colleagues. But it's all because it's a total sham, and identifying him would blow their cover. Embarrassing. Citing three different sources, moreover, rather than the whistleblower's political bias simply being he or she was a registered Democrat, as many on the left have suggested, he reportedly had a prior working relationship with the current 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, namely Joe Biden. This entire process has been a scam, Representative Scalise tweeted Monday. Dems now plan to only allow themselves and their staff to know the whistleblower's identity while concealing it from Republican committee members. This is unprecedented. What are they trying to hide? Meanwhile, Hillary falsely claims she won the 2016 election and suggests she might run again. Two-time failed Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton falsely claimed Tuesday she beat President Trump in the 2016 election and repeatedly teased that she might run again in 2020. Clinton made the false claim in an interview on PBS NewsHour after Judy Woodruff read to Hillary Trump's latest tweet about her. I think that crooked Hillary Clinton should try to enter the race to try and steal it away from the uber-left Elizabeth Warren, Trump tweeted. Only one condition. The crooked one must explain all of her high crimes and misdemeanors, including how and why she deleted 33,000 emails. You know, it's truly remarkable how obsessed he remains with me, Hillary said. But this latest tweet is so typical of him. Nothing has been more examined and looked at than my emails. We all know that. So maybe there does need to be a rematch. Obviously, I can beat him again, Hillary claimed, but just seriously, I don't understand. I don't think anybody understands what motivates him. Well, Hillary Clinton musing about a 2020 rematch. I can beat him again. It would be a complete catastrophe for the Democrats. Meanwhile, the CIA whistleblower professionally tied to one candidate. The second was a first one source. We know now what's going on. It's completely revealing. And this is just the beginning. We have another Democrat debate coming up on Tuesday. Everyone should watch it and check out the fallout, Louisa. And I think that's a really good place for us to tie it off today.
Okay, and I wanted to just make one comment, folks. Watch out for Project Veritas doing an expose on CNN. That a CNN worker had worn an undercover camera and microphone and recorded all the bias that exists in the news, the fake news company CNN, and it's going to be explosive, folks, as Project Veritas always is. They're just on the cutting edge. I just give James O'Keefe a lot of respect, and for what he's doing, and I'm glad he's I wish him well, and I know he's got quite an operation there. Jim, thank you very much. What an amazing! I don't know what they really think is going to happen, Jim. It's all a nothing burger. It's all going to come up with nothing.
It's massively going to backfire. It's going to guarantee Trump picks up seats in the Senate, retakes the House, and is reelected by a landslide, Louisa, I predict with great confidence.
Jim, I have a feeling that this is going to change our country in very big ways. I have a feeling that we're not going to have a two-party system any longer, because we have what we have is an option, a choice between America and capitalism, or we have democracy, or we have a choice with socialist fascism. And that's really the only options that I see. I don't see it any other way, Jim. I don't know about you.
Well, the parties are pretty much coming down that way, ironically, Louisa. The Democrats have gone so far left that describing them as a socialist party is correct. And the Republicans maintain a belief in capitalism, and President Trump is making it work. He really is making America great again.
Oh, he absolutely is. Now we're trying to keep America great. So I'll tell you, folks, the president just keeps doing Teflon Don. Teflon Don does it again. He crushes the deep state palooka, and all's going to be good. Just vote Republican, vote for Donald Trump in the next election. Make sure that you get some extra water and food and gas, just in case there could be interruptions. There probably won't be, because the president doesn't want anybody to be caught up in this. But get prepared, folks. I really am looking forward for those mass arrests to come around, and we're going to see what this IG report has to say, and it better show the truth about the Clinton Foundation, Jim. Thank you, my friend, and good luck to you this week. I know this unfair trial that you're involved in, but I will be praying for you, and I hope all our viewers will be as well. Please say some prayers for Jim Fetzer.
I'll give you a complete report next week, Louisa. I am heartedly optimistic.
Okay, we'll be waiting for that, Jim. We're going to be praying for you, so hang in there. Good luck with all that. It's never fun going into a trial, folks. It really never is. So anyway, have a great week. It's going to be a big week, especially towards the end of the week. Some of it's going to leak out. I know it. So we'll see what happens, and we'll be back next week with another POTUS report. We're approaching our 400th report, folks. 400. Amazing. 4 years. Amazing. Okay. Have a great week, and Jim, good luck. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing.